Okay, please tell me how you came to live in Ashland.
I came to live in Ashland because I became engaged to Professor Gregory Neal Daugherty. I had been living in Chapel Hill, teaching at the high school there. We both met in Rome one summer. We were both Fulbright scholars. And one thing led to another once we got back, and it was much easier for me to move up here than it was for him because he was on a tenure track in a college. And being a high school teacher, I had a lot more mobility. So that's how I came to be in Ashland.
How long have you been professors here?
Well, now Greg was a professor here before I met him in Rome. So, and I moved up here in 1980. Now, I have just been an adjunct on and off for probably the last 10 years. But he has been a professor for over 30 years now.
Do you have any interesting stories about any students you may have encountered?
Well, I tell you, the most pleasant memory I have, and they've all been pleasant, but the most pleasant has been this past year. I just retired from public education and didn't really, I wanted to do something different. And Greg approached me about being an adjunct professor and teaching 2 sections of Latin. And I wound up having an absolute ball with the classes because they were just 1 year beyond what I had been teaching in high school. So it was like I still had the same students, but I had them in a different environment. And in particular, I had one student who was just absolutely at my side all the time. He wanted to make sure that he got off on the right foot and constantly would come see me in the afternoons. It was great. In fact, he knew that he could just meet me at the gym if he wanted to, and we could walk around the Brock Center and decline nouns and conjugate verbs. So it's been really great to see how the students have adjusted to having a former high school teacher as their professor, and they've been very receptive, very receptive.
So do you think Randolph-Macon is different because its liberal arts are in a small town atmosphere than other colleges?
I certainly do, because like I say, I did work at Chapel Hill High School for several years before I moved up here, and that environment was totally different. I'd always dreamed of living in Chapel Hill, and then when I did live in Chapel Hill, it did not turn out to be what I wanted it to be. Living in Ashland, living here at Randolph-Macon College has been wonderful. The small town atmosphere is exactly something that a lot of students need, and I think many adults need it as well.
Tell me some more about your neighborhood, please.
I live out in the Elmont area. In fact, Greg and I purchased the old Elmont Elementary School before we got married, several months before we got married, and we've spent our marriage, instead of having children, we've been taking care of this house and renovating this old school to make it a home and to landscape the yard around it and put in some gardens and so forth. It's a very quiet, bucolic area. We look out from our deck in the back across the street in front, and we see horses and stables. We can see the sunset in that direction. We just have to barely turn around, and in the morning over a cup of coffee on the deck, we can see the sun come up. It's just a wonderful rural area. We've had a wonderful neighbor, Mr. Clarence Burkett, until he died in October, has just been a wonderful person to know, and his family, his daughter now lives in the house, and it's just a very close, neighborly area. We just love it.
So during what time period was your house a school?
The turn of the century, and I mean the last century, from the 1800s to the 1900s. In fact, the house will be, I think, 100 years old this August, 1909, somewhere 1909, 1910. This one more year, it'll be 100 years old. And there are parts of it that look exactly the way it did the last day of school. There's one room that we haven't touched. It has the bulletin boards and the blackboards and the school industrial green paint on the walls. But it's been a labor of love, and we treasure the fact that we've had these years to work with this house, and we know that the next people who buy it from us will be able to take it further and do even more with it.
That's very interesting. I'm going to have to come by and visit someday.
Oh, please do. You won't be able to tell it's a schoolhouse, but let me know when you're going to come by, because a lot of people have mistaken it for a church. In fact, we had some people we were having a party one night, a Christmas party, and some people thought that it was where the location of a wedding was. And so before we knew it, we had part of the wedding party in the house with our party, because we had luminaires out front, and it does have the imposing front to it that makes you think that it's something different from a home. So.
Tell me what has changed within your lifetime as far as physical appearance is concerned in your neighborhood. What have been some major changes?
The major change out where I live, just south of Ashland, has been the traffic, and I've noticed that in Ashland as well. Many more cars, many more people have discovered this area, and it's a little more crowded than it used to be. I will say that when I first saw the campus 28, 29 years ago, after living in Chapel Hill, I was in shock. I wasn't really sure I wanted to come up here. Where the admissions building is, or there at the beginning of the campus that used to be a bank, that used to be where a Dairy Queen was. And I remember sitting there thinking, what have I done? What have I left? But over the years, I've seen Randolph-Macon change so much for the better. The buildings have been restored. I'm very much into the fact that they've done that. They've not torn old buildings down. They've restored them. They have found new uses for buildings. When they have added on, they've done it in such a way that it meshes very nicely with what was here and enhances what was already here. It's a beautiful campus today, but I can truthfully say I was not impressed with it about 28 years ago. So it's come a long way.
Has college involvement in the town changed over the years?
I think it has. I think you find more people who work on the campus becoming a better and bigger part of what's going on in the community. Just, to take for an example, the fact that Professor Spagna is now on the town council. That's a wonderful opportunity, and Anthony Keat has been done the same thing for a number of years. I think it has become less of town and gown and grown more together, and that can only help the community. I know that the community realizes that Randolph-Macon is a significant economic feature in the town, but I think they also look to Randolph-Macon as a significant social feature. Many performances and things come to Blackwell that this community would not be able to take, would not have if it was not for the college. And I think they've learned to work together during good times and bad times to solve problems and to enhance the community. So I'm very positive. I feel very positive about what's gone on these last 30 years.
Has there been any major events that have taken place recently, like cultural events that the college has sponsored?
I'm not sure I'm the one to ask about that. While I enjoy taking part in those things, I have to be truthful, my husband does not. And that's just because he's not into crowds. He's just not someone who likes crowds. So we don't get to take part in as many things like that. Every now and then I'll get him out. But there has been a significant increase in social opportunities for faculty meetings members since President Lindgren has come on board. He and his wife Cheryl have just stepped up and made sure that there are opportunities for faculty members to be together, to see one another, and that is what has impressed me most recently about what's been going on. But that's strictly on campus. That doesn't quite flow into the Ashland scene. I think one of the things that I am most impressed with Ashland is the fact that we get big name music these days at the coffee house and so forth. While I don't get to attend because I do respect my husband's desires not to go out, since he's not into that. I have friends who tell me wonderful things about what goes on. And I think it's great for the kids. I think it's great for the adults in town. I think many of the adults my age are excited about it because they remember doing that when they were your age. I mean, I remember going out and seeing concerts, especially with my friends who went to UNC Chapel Hill. We would always get to see concerts and things like that. And it's great that you can see these people here, and you don't have to go into Richmond, or you don't have to go to Fredericksburg or D.C. You can see the entertainment here. So I think that's a wonderful draw to the community.
What do you think about the businesses here? Do you have any special memories?
Well, I think the business that I frequent the most, along with my husband, is the Iron Horse. We looked early on for a place in Ashland where we could go out at least once a week because we determined before we got married that we wanted to have one night a week as a date night. And Tuesday was it, which coincided with Women's Club, so I could go to Women's Club on Tuesday afternoon and then meet him at the restaurant that would be across the street. It wasn't always the Iron Horse. There have been several other eateries there, some more for college students than for an older clientele. But we've really enjoyed going there. We know Mimi, and while she was there, and her children, we've watched them grow, and we know we'll be able to do the same things with the new owner. So we've really enjoyed that particular business. We have frequented other businesses, most notably the Caboose. We love that. And I love Crosses. Don't go there very often, but there's a reason why I don't. My father was a grocer. He had a grocery store very similar to Crosses. It's very hard for me to go in there because I look for my father when I go in there. So I love it. I love the fact that it's there. It reminds me very much of his grocery store, and he did the same thing. He used to take groceries to people who couldn't get out to get them, and I can remember my dad doing just what they did. They'd go to the house, deliver them, and sometimes even put them on the shelves or in the refrigerator if necessary. So that small town atmosphere, that piece right there, reminds me so much of my childhood in Hickory, North Carolina. And so it has a very tender part in my heart because of that.
Do you think any of the businesses are being threatened by new development?
I know there is a segment that feels that Walmart was really going to do it. I think because of their stand against that and a smaller Walmart going in, that the threat has been lessened of the big box. I think that whenever you are close to a highway, the way Ashland is, and I mean really close, it can hurt you and it can help you. The community benefits from the economy, the economic boost of people coming through the town, but it can also be a distraction and detract from the town. I think the city council has worked very hard, town council has worked very hard to make sure that that doesn't happen. By living south, I don't see it as much as my friends who live in Ashland. We have the best of both worlds. We live close enough to be here in 3 minutes. We live close enough to be in Henrico and Richmond in 15 minutes. But all of Hanover is threatened because eventually those circles of business radiating out from Richmond are going to reach, just as the north, the businesses radiating out of Washington and now Fredericksburg are going to collide. So we're gonna be caught in the middle at some point, but I think it will be some time.
Does the town have any problems with expansion of the college?
They always have problems with expansion of the college. I know the college for years has wanted to close the major road through it and make it more of a walking campus. I'd love to see that happen. I think it would enhance the college, and I think it really would enhance the neighborhoods on either side of the college. But that would involve planning roadways. And I'm not sure that has been addressed to the satisfaction of the people living in both the north and the south of town. It would involve, I know it would involve, some homes being removed. It would have to. And because of that, I can see why it's not happened. And you've got to consider everybody in the town. We all have to live together. And if it's just not feasible, it's not feasible. I would like to see it happen, but I don't live, as I said, in Ashland, so I can see why it's not as much of an issue for me as it would be for someone else. I'd hate to have to be on US 1 all the time if I lived in the northern part or the southern part and couldn't make access some other way. Yeah.
Right now, what are the big gathering places in your neighborhood?
The Ruhrtan Club in Elmont is the big place to be. They sponsor scouting activities, and the Ruhrtan Club also is the place to go for yard sales and for wedding receptions. And they twice a year have a wonderful day when they sell Brunswick stew or barbecue chicken or homemade barbecue, which was made by our neighbor Clarence Burkett, and now his daughter has taken over doing that. So that's one of the major places. The other one would be the churches in the area. They're always a draw, and the schools also are very much a center of the communities. And the school system in Hanover has very much an open door policy with the community in allowing community events to take place in them, just as Randolph-Macon does.
What do you feel about Duncan Memorial's involvement in the town? Because it's located right near the college.
There was a time when I thought, poor Duncan Memorial. I mean, how can they function because they're just part of the campus? But I don't feel that way anymore, and they're such an integral part not only of the campus, but they make, I think, a nice bridge between the college and the community. And their closeness between the two, I mean, they really are a bridge. I think they are a guiding force and always have been, because first and foremost, no matter what happens, this will always have originated as a Methodist institution, the college. And so the influence that they have and have had over the years is something that can't be denied. They are so receptive to opening their facilities to the college and to the community, just like the schools are. Not all churches are able to do that, but this church singularly in this community does that. And I think that's, it says a lot about the community, it says a lot about the church, and the churches in general are a very vital part of this community, definitely.
Are there any events that take place between the churches? Like a collective effort?
I know that there are gospel sings that take place. I know that there are arts and crafts fairs that they work on, and I feel sure, since I'm not a member of this community per se, and as far as churches go, I feel sure that there's some kind of ecumenical council that allows these churches to work together. I know that when anything in the community happens, you can expect St. Anne's and St. James and the First Baptist Church, all of the churches in the area with Duncan to unite behind whatever catastrophe is going on and to assist in any way. Shiloh, all of them, they work together, and I know their ministers know one another. When I taught in Hanover County Schools, I would quite often go to the school board meetings, especially when I was a supervisor for foreign language at the school board level. And every school board meeting, a different minister in Hanover delivers the opening prayer. And and they knew one another, and they knew the school board members, and you could tell it was an integral part of the community. Churches, schools, community working together.
So that's a trademark of the small town atmosphere?
Definitely. That is not something you see as readily, I think, in a larger town. I think in larger cities, they may have more of a structure. I think you don't need as much of a structure and an organization between the different churches in a smaller community. I think they don't think anything about picking up the phone and calling one another instead of going through some kind of hierarchy and structure that you would find in a city situation.
Tell me about some of the organizations in Ashland, such as the Women's Club, and their involvement in the town.
Okay. I belong to two women's organizations in the town of Ashland. One is the Women's Club, and the other is the Ashland Garden Club. And I've been a member of each for just about the same amount of time. I remember I got my invitations to join like within 1 month of each other, and it was very heady for me to become part of this, especially the Women's Club. That was the first invitation I got. I had admired that group for a long time. When I moved here from Chapel Hill, I moved into an apartment over Miss Craddock's house. It was the guidance area on campus. I'm not sure. It's the Bailey House. And I moved up there, and Martha was a member of the Women's Club, and she invited me to go while she lived on several occasions, especially for the teas, because you can always invite guests for the teas. And quite often, Greg would do a paper for her, because in her later years she wasn't able to do her paper. And we all 35 of us, are under obligation to do a paper each year unless we are a treasurer or the president or on either the social or program committees. Now, that wasn't the way it was when I first started. Those have been the most remarkable, wonderful Tuesdays of my life. Tuesday is my favorite day of the week. I know a lot of people like Saturday and Sunday, but Tuesday's my favorite, because every Tuesday for 1 hour from 4 to 5, I learn something new. I sit and listen to a wonderful presentation that is the result of someone's research for a year. This is not a social club. This is not the Junior Women's Club. This is not that type of social club. It is, in fact, many of the members don't see each other socially at all. We see each other from 4 to 5 on Tuesdays, October through April, and we listen to these papers. Sometime in late years, and I've done this myself, they've developed into PowerPoint presentations, or sometimes you have a guest speaker who comes. But my favorite papers, the ones I've given and the ones I have attended, have been the ones that are by a speaker who has not only researched her topic, but she has devoted time toward writing up her topic and read her paper to us. It is probably a very archaic practice, but I know I have to credit it with my ease in speaking publicly, and I certainly credit the year or 2 years, I think it was 2 years, I was secretary, because I had to write the minutes. And I learned how to write. I mean, it was like journaling. And my writing skills were honed during those 2 years, and I am the writer I am today because of that. I'm not sure every secretary would say that. Some spend more time with it than others, and of late there has been a tendency to make the secretarial minutes as brief as possible. But I'm of the Dorothy Jones frame of mind. Dorothy was one of my favorite Women's Club members, and the Marion Herget frame, that if someone took a year to do it, you can take 5 minutes to write it up and really get the essence of what that paper was all about. So it's been a love of mine. I've truly enjoyed it. The other organization I'm active in the town of Ashland is the Ashland Garden Club. And it is more of a social setting. It is a group of women who love gardening and love conservation and preservation. And those are the two missions of the club. We meet monthly, about the same schedule as the Women's Club, only we do meet in September and May and June, but we don't meet during the summer months like the Women's Club does not do with that either. I've learned a great deal about gardening. I have been privy to some absolutely wonderful women who have shared their gardening secrets and ideas. And flower arranging is one of the things that this club is very big into, because it is a member of the Garden Club of Virginia. And not all garden clubs are. This is the only one in the area that is. And so there's competition. There's a lily show. There's a rose show. There's a daffodil show. The three big shows each year. And the club is responsible for putting together an inter-club arrangement group. I've not been as active in this group as the others because it's been more difficult for me to come to their meetings. Teaching and not getting out of school till 3:30 and the meetings beginning at 3:30 had caused a problem for me for years. But I've become a better member now that I have retired. And I've always been very active behind the scenes with anything that needed to be done on a computer, because they have come up into the age of technology. Both groups have. And always have been active in the Garden Week, because there's always a tour associated with this club for Garden Week, and I've chaired that before, and so it's a lot of fun. I've learned more skills, different skills, and I think that's what is so interesting about this community. Doesn't matter what your interests are, there's an activity for you, and you can bet your bottom dollar you're going to learn more and grow more as an individual. This is a community where knowledge is stressed, learning is stressed at all levels of your life, and it allows you to be that lifelong learner that we want our students to be and our children to be. And I have found that I've become a lifelong learner through those two organizations in Ashland.
Has the Garden Club had any major town projects?
They have. In fact, we have an ongoing project at Scotchtown. We're one of the groups that's responsible for some of the grounds there. The Garden Club of Virginia has that as one of its historic preservation sites, and we help them with that. We help behind the scenes quite often with tours, like the Christmas tour that Hanover Arts and Activities Center puts on. We usually do a house or two for them. I think that was what was done this past year. There is a big gala that's going to be in the fall for one of the local groups that assist particular families and children that have special needs, and we'll be assisting with that. We're going to be doing the flowers for that. So not only in the community, but at the college. I know when the president's inauguration took place, the Garden Club of Virginia was, well, not the Garden Club of Virginia, but the Ashland Garden Club, a member of the Garden Club of Virginia, was asked to assist with the tables, decorations, and so forth. So we find ourselves, the community knows we're there, and when they have a need, they don't hesitate to call the president and say, we need someone to do this, this, and this. And she's very good about rallying the forces and getting us organized and out there.
Did you participate in the Strawberry Fair?
I did not participate in the Strawberry Fair this year. In fact, we were out of town, so we did not participate this year, but it's one of my favorite events in Ashland. I love strawberries, and it's just always an exciting atmosphere. I miss it being on the old campus, but I think that now that's a perfect opportunity to talk about the town and the community and the college all working together to come up with a solution to a problem, because those trees were suffering, the maples and the oaks on the old campus, and there was a need to move that just slightly north to the Fountain area, and I think that's been a very good compromise. And there, the street is closed, and that's at least one day when everyone gets to see what it would be like if it was closed the whole time.
Have you seen any other renovations on the campus?
The old chapel is the one I'm most familiar with, and the Wash Frank Hall, of course, but old chapel, because the upstairs lecture hall with all of its electronic gadgets is something that is being used by the classics department on a regular basis. Each year, the first Saturday in December, Latin teachers from all over the state are invited to attend what's called the Saturday Seminar at Randolph-Macon College. And they come and they listen to a day's worth of information that they can actually take back to their classroom and use on a Monday morning, or whenever they want to. I know that doesn't sound like anything special, but Latin teachers, as a rule, are the only Latin teacher in the building. There's only one. And so you don't have anyone to talk to, like the Spanish teachers. They have, 3 or 4 people to talk to. Or the English teachers. They have a whole department to talk to. So this gives Latin teachers a day each year, and they used to do this twice a year, but they've cut back, to go to this building and use this facility, which is just perfect, to learn, to talk, to share, to network. And it's been a wonderful venue, and that's something that I think has really enhanced, that Old Chapel building has enhanced that. I know it has enhanced the programs, the other programs on campus with the students. So that renovation in particular, I think, has been wonderful. I also want to say I think the renovation of what used to be lovingly called the motel dorms has been great. I heard the students talking about that this year, especially the recent renovations in those buildings. They love those buildings. And when I think about the fact that it was custodial staff years ago that built those buildings, and that they are still used and in good condition, very solidly built, and that it's a great place, especially for freshmen. They need a place they can call their own. I remember when I went to UNC Greensboro as a freshman, I lived in the freshman quad, and there were 6 dorms there, and it was all freshmen, and we really bonded. We did things together, and I think that's just something very special. You don't find that in your big universities anymore. Even, I have to say, my lovely UNC Greensboro, the freshman quad is not quite the freshman quad that it used to be. So I think this is something that sets Randolph-Macon apart from other schools, and the renovations are part of what enhanced that.
Yeah, there's a lot of programming for the freshmen. Do you see that in other colleges? Orientations?
Orientation, yes. I think all colleges are worried about their freshmen. Because just because somebody has come to your school doesn't mean that that person is actually going to stay there and graduate. There are lots of enticements to pull freshmen away and sophomores. And I know I almost got pulled away myself when I was at UNCG. Barely, almost got pulled away to UNC. But I think that Randolph-Macon does a very good job of this. They are on top of things. I was and have been very impressed with the administration and the quickness with which they would respond to my SOS when a child wasn't coming to class on a regular basis, or somebody was not performing the way that I thought they would. I got a lot of support, and those students were getting a lot of support. And I don't remember hearing my peers talk about that kind of support back in the Stone Age when I was in college. So I think college has come a long way, but I don't think it's unique to Randolph-Macon. I think it is something that has just become part of the business of higher ed these days.
I know Randolph-Macon has a small professor to student ratio.
Mm-hmm. And that's wonderful. It's better than when I came from at the high school. and I have to say, you know, as a Latin teacher, especially at the upper levels, I had small classes. Several of my classes, the last year I taught, I had one class of 5. I had a class of 10. I mean, but Hanover County Schools was very good about making sure that students got to complete their cycle. I love the fact that the classes are smaller here. I do think it is very important for them to have small classes. We have a student clientele here that needs that attention. I mean, one of the things, it didn't surprise me, but I know it surprised my husband when he first realized it, is that we have a lot of students with special needs and with IEPs and so forth, as it were. That's not something that was foreign to me when I came, because I was used to that in a public school setting. But I think for the professors, it has been a shock to them. But what you have at a lower level is going to find its way up at the next level, because you have to meet the needs of the students that you accept. And Randolph-Macon has done that not only with special programs and smaller classes, but I will say having the tutoring program, amazing. I loved being able to contact the Latin tutor and say, so-and-so and so-and-so will be calling you. This is their email, and if you don't hear from them, let me know. So we could make sure that those needs of the students were addressed at the beginning of a slide downward instead of at the end when nothing can be done. So I've really appreciated that, and it was very easy. I love the fact there's less bureaucracy when it comes to this than what I encountered in public schools. It's a much more professional way of handling things, but I do realize that in public school you have other concerns that, especially the age of the students. Here, it's age appropriate. The intervention is age appropriate, and so there's less bureaucracy. Lower level has to be more because of the age.
What do you feel of fundraiser events and Making a Difference Day?
I think those are exciting opportunities for the students because they create an atmosphere where a social consciousness is raised in the students. Now, that was a big thing in the 60s, late 60s, 68 through 72 when I was in college. We knew about Vietnam. We knew about social issues. We reacted on campuses. There's not been a lot of social unrest in the intervening years. Perhaps there should be more. And I'm not advocating that there should be more, but I do think an awareness is very important for our students. They need to learn how to live in this world. The world that they came from, the nice cocoon of their parents' house and community, it may not be what they find is the reality of the situation when they graduate. I do believe a college owes students much more than a learning experience associated with a book, a classroom, and a lab. That's why I think the dorm life is so important. I think all students should live on campus. That's why I think having a strong library system is very important. And that's why I think having things like Making a Difference Day and the fundraisers, bringing canned goods in instead of a library fine, I think that's just a marvelous idea. Let them know there's a food bank that needs help. Those opportunities are tangible ways in which students can learn about the world around them, and they can say, oh, okay, when I graduate, I can do something more about this or continue. And so I think it's a great service that we offer the students and our community by offering these opportunities.
Do a lot of the graduates return to Ashland to live?
You know, I don't know what the percentage is, but like I know in the classics department, in recent years, the students who have graduated and gone into teaching have settled here. We grab them as quickly as we can. I know I wouldn't have retired if somebody in that department had not graduated. But the time was right. She wanted a job. I wanted to retire. It was perfect. They want to stay here. In fact, one of the ones that graduated this year who's not going to graduate school, that was her big goal. She wanted to get a job in the area because she wanted to live in a small town. She had enjoyed the experience she'd had in Ashland, and she wanted to replicate that in her life.
And do you think the rise of students owning cars have changed student life?
Yes,
Over
because
the
they
years?
can get in their car and they can go anywhere they want to. But I think they can also get on the internet and go anywhere they want to as well. So I think there are lots of things out there. The world is not a small place anymore. It's not unheard of for students to have traveled overseas numerous times before they get to college. I know the students that I had in high school went with me. Some of them went with me twice to Italy in the time that I had them over a 6-year period. So it's not just cars. It's internet. It's television. It's everything is just out there. It's amazing when I think about the changes in our lives since I was a student. And then when I think about my parents, both of whom lived during the Depression and World War II, I don't know how, they handled all of this, because I find it hard to handle the changes. But students take it for granted. They don't know that they're just 20 or 40 years away from having outhouses instead of indoor plumbing, let alone internet. But I do think cars pose a distraction, but they also pose an opportunity. You have to look at it both ways.
How does it feel to live in a town with the railroad tracks running through it?
Very good question. I know that I did not want to live on the tracks when we were looking for a house because I didn't want the danger. I see it as a danger, especially with some of the fast trains. But we live very close to the tracks. That's where we live in Elmont. And if something happens and that train doesn't come by, you get so used to it. I will wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning if I don't hear the train. And, that'll happen sometimes in the winter when it snows and there's ice and I know something is wrong because subconsciously I didn't hear something. So, it's a tie to the past. It's also a tie to the future. I love the train because we can flag it down and go to D.C., and Greg and I prefer to do that rather than get in a car and drive up there because neither one of us are into 95 in a big way. So it's a blessing and a curse. And I think over the years I've realized it's much more of a blessing than the curse I thought it was. I grew up in a town with a railroad track down the middle. But the railroad track that went down the town I grew up in was not a distraction as far as the noise. It was a social distraction. You truly lived on the right side of the tracks or the wrong side of the tracks. At Ashland, it's never been right and wrong. Everything's right on either side of the track. It's just the track is there in the center. It's not a dividing point. Again, it's like a bridge, and it's just taking you to other opportunities. But that was not, I thought it was going to be like the train I grew up with in my hometown, which divided social classes, divided one middle school from another middle school, that type of thing. It wasn't unifying. The train in Ashland, the tracks are unifiers.
Has Ashland always had good relations between social classes?
I really don't know the answer to that. I have not perceived that there's not been a good relationship, but I can only speak from what I've seen and the interactions that I've personally had. And I think a lot of whether you have good interactions or poor has to do with how you're raised. And this community, everybody works together, everybody goes to school together. And I know that, of course, that wasn't the way it always was, and it wasn't that way where I grew up either. But it doesn't seem to have had the same, they didn't seem to have had the same problems that, say, Richmond obviously had and still has, because I think a lot of their problems stem from past racial problems that they had.
So race relations have been good as well in Ashland?
As far as, as I've seen him in the 28, 30 years I've been here. But again, I came here after the issues were legally resolved. And so it's hard to tell. I don't know. But I hear stories. And the stories I've heard from the people who have lived here all of their life indicate to me that there weren't problems. There was an understanding that people were treated differently, but I think that there was such a social conscience in this area that when the opportunity came to resolve those differences, it was met with open arms, not with resistance. But again, that's the take I have on what I've heard, and I've only heard one side of the story.
What do you think are Ashland's most colorful characters, personality-wise?
Dead or alive? You want
Either.
them alive?
Either.
Well, dead would have to be, first and foremost in my book, would have to be Nina Peace. She was a member of the Women's Club, gave some just wonderful papers. I remember one on baseball. Who would have thought Nina Peace was a baseball lover? Forthright. Could get herself in a lot of trouble with people, but her heart was always in the right place. The words just didn't always come out exactly the way I think that she really wanted them to come out. The meaning wasn't, people didn't take the meaning for what she thought. I thought she was a professional in every sense of the word. There wasn't anything that she wasn't willing to do to help somebody else, any cause that she wouldn't take on. And I thought she had a lot of integrity because of that. Again, I didn't agree with her speeches all the time and her choice of words all the time, but her heart was the best. Her heart was Ashland. I hated to see her die so young. It was rough.
There's a statue of her outside the library.
Right. There's a bust of her outside the library in the plaza. And from one angle, it really does look like Nina. And I love it being there because I see it every Tuesday when I go into the Women's Club of Ashland. It's like she's just right outside the door, So it's very special. And I know a lot of the members feel that way because she was a member for a number of years, and we meet every Tuesday at 4, and she worked her schedule as a lawyer and as judge around that 4 o'clock meeting, as many of us did around things, but that was really rough for her to do, but she didn't like missing those meetings.
Her son was interviewed for this project.
Yes, and he has, of course, his political aspirations and ideals are the antithesis of his mom's, but she would and did support him and his views totally and completely, and was totally and completely proud of him. And I'm glad he was part of this because I'm sure he had a lot to say about Nina. And that's a voice that's been silenced, but needs to be part of this because she is definitely a voice that helped to shape Ashland.
Are there any other voices like that you can think of? Any other influential people?
I'm trying to think. See, I know there are others, and I know their names, but they don't have a personal. I don't have a personal
right
connection with them the same way. I would say Martha Craddock, but Martha Craddock wasn't the voice. she was very quiet, little lady, retired school teacher, but had an opinion. Devout in her religion, Presbyterian, went to the Ashland Presbyterian Church. For me, a very special person. And she, thinking of her makes me recall the other two that I did have personal contact with. And again, it's going to be women, Marion Herget and Dorothy Jones. The greatest compliment ever paid me personally was Marion telling me how much she appreciated my Women's Club papers. That woman was an author. She was a writer. She was a very special person. And for her to say that about something I had written was just what I needed. I mean, it came at the right time in my life, and it has propelled me into writing more and doing some publications, professional publications in education. I miss her terribly. Just down to earth, but also really out there too. Cosmopolitan. She spent time in New York City, and knew movers and shakers up there, but yet was her happiest here and found a niche for herself and shared her immense writing talents and speaking talents here. And that was amazing. Same with Dorothy Jones, professor in a college in South Carolina, but couldn't get back to Ashland fast enough when she retired. Sharp to the very end, sharp as she could be, very opinionated, but oh, what a wit, what a dry sense of humor, and always had a kind word to say, and really up on things going on in the world today. You just don't see that in many people their age, in their 80s. You just don't see that. I don't see that in my own mother. So I admire women in which I've seen that, wanting to know more, grasping the new technology, not shunting it out, and wanting to live to see even more.
And that has been a fundamental part of the Women's Club since it started?
It is. I mean, it was started by 16 women in 1896 who just decided we need to have a current event club. And it was a current events club to begin with. They subscribed to magazines, read the articles, and reported on them. And they shared the magazines. It's not like today where everyone has a subscription or can go online and download. But this whole ideal of knowing about the world, sharing what you learn about the world, stretching your mind, seeing beyond Ashland. They love living in the small town, and I think that's true today, you can live in the small town, but you can take advantage of the opportunities and reach well beyond the small town. Pluck what is most appropriate for your life or for your community and use it to the advantage of your community. That's what I see going on in Ashland today.
So how does it feel to live in the center of the universe?
In Elmont? Dick Gillis would hate that, wouldn't he? How does it feel? See, I've been accused of not really living in Ashland. Some of the things going on for the birthday, I wanted to be very active in one particular element, and I was told, but you don't live. So it's made me wonder. I think I live on the fringes of the center of the universe, but I think the center of the universe is wherever you live and what you make of it. I just think that it's an appropriate phrase for Ashland because so many people have made something of living in Ashland. They've made it the center. They've used it as a centering agent for their life. And I think that's what makes it the center of the universe, not where it physically is on the map or so forth. I just think it's a state of mind more than a place on a map. And I like living in that state of mind.
So, what is there to be done for fun in Ashland? I know there are a lot of outside activities such as biking.
Right, and I know about the bikers, not because I am sitting astride one, but I'm on the 76 bike trail. And on Saturdays, we don't leave the house between 8 o'clock and 11 for fear that we will kill one of them or they will do damage to us. So I know all about the bikers. What is there to do in Ashland? I think anything you want to do, you can do in Ashland. It's all here. It's just, are you going to take advantage of it? And you know, the good thing about Ashland is that most people, not all, but most people will not hold it against you if you don't dabble in everything. Pick and choose, do what you want to, and they leave you alone. And I like that about Ashland, because there's some things that I don't want to get sucked up into because I know it will drain the life's blood out of me, like the what is it they do every year with the talent show or the
variety show?
The variety show. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I know if I got involved in it, I'd never have a life again, because that's what happens when these things happen. And so I've stayed away from that. My answer to them has always been, but don't you need someone in your audience? You can't have everyone on stage. You need a few of us in the audience. So my contribution is to be in the audience. But it's an opportunity that I can take or I can leave. And you have those opportunities, I think, more readily available to you in a small town than you do a large town. Sometimes it's way too much in a large town. And a lot of times it has to do with a price tag in a larger setting. And in a small community like this, there's less expense. It's more opportunity. It's more along the lines of volunteering, an hour here, an hour there, but not necessarily a big ticket item or something that will, unless it's the variety show, take your life away from you.
Well, that concludes my questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
No, except that I may live in Elmont, but physically, but my well-being is all because that is a suburb of Ashland. Ashland is the greater picture, and I love being able to draw upon the assets here. Thank you for the opportunity, too.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.